Hey, everybody out there. It is me, Jerome, and I've got Homer Smith with me again. Some of you might remember him. He was on a previous episode of our podcast, You're Next. And we've started this workshop series, and we love to bring some of our most popular guests back. And Homer's one of those folks. And so we wanted to have a conversation about maximizing family wealth when selling your business. We think that the liquidity event is the thing that founders should get after they spend so many decades of their life building a business. But what most people don't understand is if they don't do that well, right? If they don't structure the exit well, they are not going to maximize the benefit, specifically financially, to their family. And so Homer's an expert. He runs Konvergent Wealth. He's helping business owners every day get out of their business and get the maximum benefit if you get them involved early enough. Sometimes people do the tax planning as an afterthought, and it's not actually planning, it's retroactive. You just end up writing big checks. And so I'm going to get out of the way and let Homer do his thing. And maybe he'll let me come back in a little bit later and talk to you folks a little bit. So with that said, man, Homer, take it away, man. Thank you so much for being here today.
Jerome, thank you so much. And very excited to be here. And as I'll share through this presentation today, that the mental readiness, the stuff that Jerome is so good at, is such a critical part to all of this as well, which is why I'm excited to be doing this presentation with him and being able to bring him back in for, I think, for some critical parts to it. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go through a presentation with you all, and just excited to share what we've learned, and hopefully we can bring you some good education today and add some value. So let's see if this all comes together. All right. So title of the presentation is Maximizing Wealth When Selling Your Business. And where I want to start in helping you guys think through all of this is when you think of some of the great tragedies out there, either books, movies, events, what are some of the things that you guys think of? For me, and some of the things that we came up with, some of the most important tragedies that most people are aware of, Romeo and Juliet might come to mind. The Titanic, obviously a great theatrical version of that. For me personally, I'm from Seattle. One of the biggest tragedies sports-wise I've ever witnessed was losing to the Patriots when we were at the 1-yard line and didn't hand it off to Marshawn Lynch. But what I also think of when it comes to the work that I do and the important work that we do with business owners is that there's two ways a conversation can go when you get to the point of selling your business. The first conversation could be something like this, where because the pre-sale planning work wasn't done well, because either the market wasn't ready or maybe you weren't ready as an owner, you didn't end up getting the value that you expected, that you hoped for from the sale of the business. And instead of talking about all of the amazing adventures, travel, plans with the family that you were hoping and expecting, you might even be needing to continue to work in the business to just maintain your lifestyle or have to dramatically reduce the lifestyle that you expected because you weren't able to complete the work and really get the outcome that you were looking for. Outcome number two, that the other conversation you might be having is walking in, instead of this picture, you're walking in with the biggest smile you've ever had. You're confident that with the sale proceeds, the structure of the deal, the terms, that you're going to be able to do everything you've ever wanted for your family, as well as support the causes you care about. You figured out your purpose that you want to focus on post-sale, and you're getting to move on to that amazing life of significance that so many business owners want when they sell their business. The challenge is so many times that when we get to know business owners, we come in late in the process. And it is a tragedy to me that so many hardworking business owners have built these businesses for 20, 30, 40 years of their lives. And when they're finally ready to sell it, something happens right at the finish, right at the goal line. And what we know in doing all the research around this is that these tragedies, these unfortunate events, can all be prevented. And it's always around the planning that you do before the sale. So I'm going to share with you some math. And again, this is a lot of research we've done recently on the challenges that business owners face when they are finally ready to go to market and sell their business. And when we've done extensive interviews with M&A experts, investment bankers on their experience in representing and talking with business owners is that only about 30% of companies that are brought to market ultimately are able to complete a transaction within the first 2 years of trying. So you would think that number would be much higher, right? There's a lot of buyers out there. There's a lot of cash on the table, but the numbers are actually pretty low. Only about 30% of companies that are brought to market ultimately complete a transaction. And then it gets worse, because then when we surveyed business owners that were successful, so the 30% that actually make it, only about 19% of them are highly satisfied with the results from the transaction. So you put that together, it's about just under 6% of all business owners that raise their hand. They're actually ready to go to market. They want to sell their business. Only about 6% say they were highly satisfied with the results. And most of that was around not feeling like they confidently could say that they maximize the family wealth as a part of the transaction. And our belief is that that number is actually dramatically lower, because in all of the work that we've done with our clients, they're often not even aware of many of the things they could have done to be even better off in the sale. So my view is it's probably more like only 2 or 3% of business owners are truly maximizing their results as a part of their transaction. So really the goal that I want to share with all of you and help all of you with today is pretty simple. I want to make sure you are all in that 5.7%. My bigger vision, my bigger purpose for doing the work that I do, and I'm so happy to be connected with Jerome and the work that he is doing, is I would love it if in a number of years when this survey is redone, that number is much higher because of the work that we are doing. I'd love to see not just the clients we work with get into that group. I'd love to see so many more business owners get to be having a much more successful exit and be much more highly satisfied with the outcome. So how do we do it? What are the things that we know through all the work that we've done that can make a dramatic difference in the outcome that you get around a business transaction? So the number one thing is to understand, why do business owners fail to sell, and why you end up getting less than you anticipated when you go to market. So I'm going to walk you through a number of reasons why this can be, and then we'll obviously talk about some solutions as well. So here are the top list of reasons that business owners mention that were causes for them not maximizing the wealth. The first one is one that we see again quite a bit, is owners having an unrealistic expectation on the outcome from the process. And this often happens in my experience when a business owner doesn't truly know the value of their own business ahead of going to a transaction, but maybe they've heard from other business owners in their network of what they sold for. And they might have heard, hey, we got an 8, a 9, a 10 multiple on our business. And so you just start to attach those numbers to your own without understanding that every private business is so different, even if they're in the same industry. And the likelihood of getting the same result is very, very low, because there's going to be different things inside of your business that are going to cause that. There's often internal conflicts with partners and family. So if there's more than one owner, they might have different personal goals on the outcome themselves, and even different professional goals for the outcome. And so often there's conflict that leads to not necessarily the sale not getting done, but even if it does get done, why it doesn't result in the best outcome. Another big one, and we'll go into this one in more detail in a future slide, is the financials aren't in good order. So even if the business is growing and doing well, if you can't confidently show that with really clean and really clear financial data, it's going to cause the buyers to have some level of skepticism and concern, which means they're going to have to discount the price because they're just not 100% confident your financials are accurate. This one, the next one, this is an important one, is conflicts between the buyer and seller. We're working with a consulting firm right now, very successful consulting firm, doing over 50 million of revenue. And one of their biggest competitors is Accenture. It's one of the big consulting firms. And while I'm sure Accenture would be happy to buy this firm because they keep beating them on most of the competitive bids that they're going up against them with, the culture of that might clash so much that it may not end up being the right fit, and the deal likely isn't going to get done in that particular scenario. Again, it could, but that is a risk. So as the seller, you got to really understand who is the right type of buyer that I want to have, and how is that going to mesh with our team and culture, again, depending on what type of deal you're getting done. So we'll go through more of these in different slides, but I just wanted to give you guys a chance to see some of the most common reasons that the M&A advisors that we work with have told us are the reasons that these deals don't get done. So what are some things that need to be in place so that you can optimize for your ultimate sale? The first one is the business needs to be ready. And we're going to go through a number of these details shortly, but it's going to be, again, things like we've already mentioned. Are your financials in order? Has the business been consistently growing? Do you have the right mix of revenue? Do you have a good moat around your business? Are you like the industry or sector leader in that business? How is your management team? Can the business run without the owner? So things like that are going to be really important. So in order to it doesn't mean all those things have to be in order to get a transaction done, but in order to optimize the sale, all of those things need to be in place. Also, in order to optimize, the market needs to be ready. And what I mean by that is there's a business cycle that our economy goes through where the economic engine is humming and everything is going strong and interest rates are low and there's a ton of liquidity in the markets and a lot of deals get done. And there's times where the economic activity is really low, interest rates might be higher, and there's a lot less liquidity in the system, and which means fewer deals are going to get done. And even in those environments when deals do get done, they're probably not going to be at the same multiples that they were if the market was at its peak. And so again, in order to optimize, timing your transaction when we're in a positive business cycle is also part of the equation. And then the third piece, and this is again an area where Jerome and I collaborate quite a bit, it's the owner needs to be ready. And that's two areas that are very important. First, the owner needs to be mentally ready for that retirement. And I'm going to let Jerome speak to that a little bit later in the presentation in a lot more detail. But also then the personal finances of the owner needs to be ready. And that's a whole another set of information separate from the business being financially ready. The owner also needs to know they're financially ready for that transaction. So each of these seem pretty straightforward and make sense, but it's not often done where the business owner really thinks through all three of these and the team that they have around them is really looking at all three of them and being able to truly check the box that the business truly is ready, the market is ready, and the owner is ready in order to optimize for that transaction. So next thing that's really important to focus on is you really need to follow a playbook and really have a plan and build the right team around you to do this. So, what we often find is business owners get too close to the end before they finally start to put a true plan in place for this. Oftentimes, you may not even be thinking about selling your business just yet. And then something happens, right? Either a health issue comes up, you just decide that you're burnt out, ready to go. Or maybe it's because some unsolicited offers start coming across the table and you're like, wow, maybe my business is really worth more than I thought. Maybe it's time for me to start talking to these groups and engaging. What we find though is without a true playbook, without having created the vision for what you want your outcome to look like, and then without having the right team around you to be looking out for your best interests and making sure you're getting the best outcome, the best terms, the best conditions, oftentimes, again, you might get a transaction done, but it's not going to be optimized. So what are some ways to maximize the value as you put your team together, put your vision together? The first one is to start the pre-sale corporate planning process as early on as you possibly can. And I often talk to business owners when we get engaged with them and they're like, well, I'm not planning to sell for maybe 5 or 10 years. I don't really need to do a lot of this work now. But what I'll challenge them on is, well, if your financials were in perfect shape and super clean and easy to do strategic planning off of, would that be good for just running your business day to day? If your management team allowed you to take a month sabbatical, would that be a good thing? So all of a sudden, when we start to think through it, even if you're not planning to sell for 5 or 10 years, or maybe you're not ever planning to sell, doing the things that will put you in the best position to be optimized for a sale are also most of the things you would want to do to make your business run better, smoother, easier now. And so it's like, why not build your business to be ready for that just in case? So I'll go into more detail on some of these corporate pre-sale planning process. One that's real, again, to optimize, ideally your business is on a growth trajectory versus starting to plateau or decline. This is a conversation we have with clients all the time, is trying to really think through that timing. What they often say, well, I want to wait a year or two. We're on this great growth trajectory. If we grow another 20% a year for 2 more years, we're going to get a much higher multiple and a much higher value for the business. And that might be true, but the risk of that is, well, what if you start to grow at 10% the next year and then maybe only 5% that second year? Yes, you're still growing, but to an outside buyer, they're going to start to see the rate of change declining, and you may end up not getting as high of a multiple on your business, even if your profits are higher, where you would have been better off selling before you lost that growth path. Another one, I've mentioned it a couple of times, clean financials that can be easily understood. I'm sure many of you that are watching this, private business owners, there's a lot of advantages of being a private business owner. We get to run a lot of expenses through our business that are all legitimate business expenses, but we're able to utilize the tax code to do a lot of spending on a pre-tax basis. Well, when you go to sell, you get into this challenging period of time where, well, I want my profits to look higher because I want a higher sale value for my business, but I still want to be able to get the advantages of being a business owner and running expenses through the business. And so you need to be able to have your financials done in a way where a new buyer coming in has a lot of confidence in those clean financials, and to the point where they'll give you credit for what we call add backs. So all those expenses you are running through the business, when you pull them out of your expense, of your P&L, it's adding back in profit to your bottom line. So the longer that you are able to track those expenses, and it's one of those kind of, I want to say this in the right way, we're not talking like mafia style here, but you should be keeping two separate sets of books for your business. You should be keeping your tax financials where you are running through your expenses and all those things, but you should also consider creating an adjusted financials where you're preparing this again well in advance to be able to show a potential buyer like, hey, for multiple years, we've adjusted our financials for those areas that we know are expenses that aren't going to be expenses the buyer is going to have on their books. And therefore we deserve a higher value for the business. The longer you've been tracking that, the more clear you are, the better notes you have on all those things, the much higher likelihood is you're going to get a higher value and they're going to give you credit for those add backs. Another critical component is what kind of revenue stream do you have? And I'm very confident that even businesses that for a long time were more product-based, transactional-based, if you really do the strategic work, you can find ways to create a recurring revenue stream from that business. And when you go to market, the part of your revenue that is recurring revenue is going to get a much higher multiple than the part of your business that is transactional revenue. So the more you can shift your revenue to being recurring revenue, contractually based if possible, again, just the higher multiple you're going to get and the more you're going to be able to maximize for the value in the sale. Also, something you should be reviewing, again, even if you're not planning to sell, just as a general risk factor, is what's your customer concentration look like? Do 10% of your clients make up 80 or 90% of your revenue or profit? And if that's the case, why is that? Is that something that can and should be changed? And if not, sometimes there's business that just works out that way. Just know that you're going to have to defend that and create, again, more confidence in that buyer. That business is going to stick around and that revenue stream is going to stick around when they come in. Again, otherwise, there's a risk of them discounting the value. So part of this process is not always having to completely change your business. It's just understanding what are buyers going to be looking for so that you can just be best prepared to speak to maybe why you're not changing the business to account for some of these things. So it's just knowing what's coming. And then how dependent is the business on the owner? And so especially when it comes to financial buyers, private equity groups often are wanting to be able to invest capital in a business. They're not necessarily looking to bring in a lot of new management and new executive talent. So they're hoping that in an ideal world, again, to maximize the value, that the business has developed a really good management team where that owner could take a 1 month, 3 month sabbatical, and the business actually will continue to grow just as well. And sometimes even, if not better, than when the owner was there. And then another area, again, this is going to be different depending sometimes on a strategic versus a financial buyer, is what does your sales process and pipeline look like? And we're actually going through this with a business that we're working with. They've got an amazing client delivery system. Their processes, their systems, once they get a client, they never leave, they upsell, they get more revenue with them over time. What they don't have is a great sales pipeline and process. So while they are able to grow and land business, they don't have a consistent process of bringing in high value new clients. And so depending on who you're selling to, that might matter less or more. If you're selling to a strategist, that doesn't matter to them. They care more about your delivery because they're likely going to be able to funnel in a whole lot of new clients from their entire book. So your process won't matter. To a financial buyer though, if they want you to be the platform business for them or an important component, having that consistent ability to bring in new clients might be more important to them. So that's one that's just important to review depending on who you might be wanting to sell your business to. So those are the key corporate pre-sale planning. So beyond that, what's really the end goal that you're looking to accomplish with this transaction? What are you trying to do at the end of the day? And while getting a sale where you can maximize the sale value is important, and obviously money is a big part of this, if you don't have really a vision beyond the sale itself, the value of the sale, and again, we're going to get to this with Jerome in a little bit, you're going to find that you're still not going to feel like you optimize and maximize the value of the sale if it just ends up being about the money. So really what you need to also make sure you have a plan for your money and for yourself beyond the sale. And really the expert team that you're building around this transaction doesn't end with the transaction itself. Who is the right team to have on board with you so that you can maximize life beyond the sale? And again, this is why I'm so excited to work with Jerome and the amazing work that he does. So Jerome, I'm going to have you come back in here and speak to a little bit more about that piece of it and having that plan beyond just the financials and the sale, but really that mental readiness component of it.
Yeah, for us, we are dead set on the fact that the founder's exit paradox is an experience that just about every founder is going to have. And it's just a matter of the intensity of it. And if you don't do the work pre-exit, you are going to be in a place of panic, confusion, and struggle post-exit because you're going to walk out of business where you understand what your schedule is, who the people surrounding you are going to be, and what you're going to do, what problem you're working on, into a sea of nothingness.
Yeah.
And for most people, that predictability is the thing that gives them the confidence. We've watched far too many founders say, I got it.
Yeah.
I got it. I'll be okay. And we've watched too many exit advisors say, oh, it's not a big deal. You got enough money. You'll figure it out. I was fortunate enough to present at Exit Planning Exchange yesterday, and I actually had a financial advisor say, money's the goal. It was refreshing to hear you say today, Homer, that it's not, right? The thought is that money is just a tool, and that the tool has to be put to work in order for it to actually deliver the value that we feel like it truly has. And so we want to see people create a plan where they know who they're going to serve and what problem they're going to help them with pre-exit so that they can start working on that so they don't go into that, again, void of nothingness. We've got a pretty robust framework. If you've been around long enough, you've heard about NEXT, and that stands for nourish, evaluate, explore, and transcend. And we move folks through those 4 steps, and all the while working through the 6 centers of doubt. And if you don't know what those are, I'll just list them out just for the sake of completion here. It's going to be self-image, relationships, work, health, prosperity, and significance. And you're going to have questions about those 6 areas. And it never fails. People are like, oh, there's something else. We found that every question that you have about what exit life or post-exit life is going to be about, or how you're going to experience it, is compartmentalized in those 6 buckets. If I go a step further, the more clarity you can have about what post-exit looks like in those 6 buckets, the more confidence you'll have when you get to the place where you're walking through that portal of transformation, where you're signing documents and wires are getting sent.
Yeah. Yeah. And in my experience as well, is this is not only important post-sale. So I think the work that Jerome and I both do to be doing this work well in advance, because I've seen it at the finish line of a sale where they didn't have someone like Jerome working with them and helping them think through these things, where the smallest term or condition, nothing really important to the deal, they'll decide that's going to be the term that they're going to like not be willing to do the deal over. And everybody around the table is like, what is going on? That term is meaningless. It has nothing to do with the sale. It has nothing to do with that term. It has nothing to do with the value. It's that they're mentally not ready. And they may not even realize it, but they're basically intentionally blowing up the deal, maybe subconsciously, because they just are freaked out about what they're going to do after the sale. And they're willing to blow the deal up to just avoid that, right?
Man, I call it the pump fake, man. They're ready and they're ready, they're ready. And they give the pump fake, and everybody that was counting on the transaction to close is frustrated, disappointed, upset. And for that founder, they may not actually get to the liquidity event. Homer, you broke it all the way down to the 6% of people who actually exit to excellence, don't
Yeah.
regret it on the backside. But, some people think that there's a line wrapped around a building of folks who want to buy their business at a premium. And it's
Right.
just, in most cases, not the case. And
Yeah.
they've got a 20% chance maybe to get that thing done. And you might miss out on that one shot to actually truly maximize the valuation. And that's not the only goal, but it's a pretty important one. The
Yeah.
last thing I'll say before I get out of your way, man, is post-exit optimization, right? Your post-exit life optimization is directly impacted by the terms of your deal. And if you haven't spent time figuring out what you want that part of your life to look like, because you're just so focused on the transaction, that's like saying, oh, I'm only going to focus on the wedding. I'm not going to think about the marriage. And
Yeah.
you can end up in a real unsettling, uncomfortable space and create tons of collateral damage because you agreed to terms that just don't make sense or cooperate with the life you're trying to create post exit.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And what we often see if we're not brought in until the end often is we help them recognize that maybe that post-exit dollar is not going to do what they thought it would do because of taxes, other things, terms and conditions. But they're so far down the road with the transaction that they feel like they can't back away at that point, and then they're stuck, right? So yeah, it's so important to start this planning early for that reason. So yeah, I think that's a great point.
Well, Homer, I'll get the presentation back up, man, and let you keep rocking.
Thanks, man. All right. So back to the presentation, as I think that the conversation with Jerome and I just highlights just again how important the team is, and that your money needs its own plan. Just to Jerome's point right there, to be able to live the lifestyle that you want, and again, just having the right team around you to do that. So, like I did with the corporate pre-sale planning, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper on some of the key issues that you need to be addressing on the pre-sale planning. One we just hit on is, what's your plan for what you're going to do after the sale? And that many owners and even the team around them, as Jerome referenced, don't recognize how important the mental readiness component is, and that it's at least as important, and I think in some cases, depending on the founder, more important than the financial readiness. There are many owners that do end up building a lot of significant wealth outside their business prior to the transaction. The transaction is nice, but it's not going to change their life, but the mental readiness will. And if they're not doing something with a purpose and they don't have a reason to get up every day, their health, their mental health, physical health, mental health can all of a sudden take crazy and negative turns very quickly after that. So again, just want to emphasize how important that piece is and how often it's overlooked. Another one, again, this one seems like it would be something that everybody does, but when we do meetings with our business owners for the first time, we just ask them, what's your business worth? And within a small range, are you confident of that number? And it's amazing how few business owners really know what their business is worth. And I get it. It's very different than a public company where you can just look up Apple stock or Amazon stock day to day and you know what the value of the stock is. The reality is, a private business, your value changes every day too, based on your financials. But since nobody is buying your stock on an open exchange, there's no reason necessarily to track it that way. But the reality is, as you're preparing for a transaction, if you recall, the first reason that I mentioned, that in the number one, the most common reason that our transaction advisors say that businesses don't sell for is unrealistic expectations of the seller, of what their business is worth. And so again, many years in advance, it's important to start getting at least informal, but if not formal valuations done, just so you have a better sense of what you're looking at. And that process in and of itself will identify corporate issues that you need to address to improve the value. But on the personal side, the reason why knowing that value is so important is so then we can know what the plan will be with those resources to live your lifestyle post sale. And is that going to be enough? Have you done the math on what the business needs to sell for to live that lifestyle? And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but accounting for the expenses you run through the business. We've worked with businesses that there might be $500,000 of expenses that once the business is sold, now would be considered personal expenses and not business expenses. And if you're in a high tax state, that $500,000 of expenses, now you need to generate closer to $1 million of income pre-tax to pay for your $500,000 of expenses. And again, if you didn't do that math, you might think you're going to have enough to only realize you might have to be overly aggressive with your investments more than you wanted to be to generate the return you need to live that lifestyle. So understanding your cash flow and your budget post-sale is going to be critical. And then another massive one, and this is one where I'm pretty obsessed about, is around what are you doing to minimize taxes on the sale of your business? We're completing a transaction with a business owner right now. It's a $106 million transaction. 70 million of it's up front, 36 million of it's going to be deferred to next year. Part of that deferring process was the tax planning that we did with the business owner around it. Now we're very confident it's a strategic buyer. They're not going anywhere. So we're not worried about them not paying the 36 million. It's a guaranteed deferral. It's not an earnout. But in showing the work and the strategies we were going to have with the business owner, we're going to be able to save them somewhere between 15 and $20 million in taxes on the sale. And so for them, the difference that makes for them of having that extra money in their pocket, I've set a big number in a big transaction, but the implications of that for them of having an extra $20 million sitting in their bank account growing and doing things that they wanted to do is huge. And that same outcome applies to whether you're selling your business for 10 million, 20 million, 50 million. Obviously the total number smaller, but the percentage can be the same, right? If we could save 50% of the amount of taxes you're going to pay on that sale, it could even mean that sometimes there's an issue with your business in the sale process and the buyer comes back and they retrade the deal. And all of a sudden, instead of a $20 million offer, they're coming back with 18 million. And you got to make a choice. Do I walk away from this deal and hopefully go find a buyer that's going to pay me 20? Or what if there were some ways that we, because of the tax planning we're able to do, we can make the transaction look like it was a $20 million deal, at least pre-tax. And because of that tax savings, we can still make that $18 million number work. So the value of the planning around the taxes could, again, be the reason that a deal can get done or not, at least get done in a way that you're still feeling like you're optimizing and maximizing for the value of the sale. So that's just such a critical piece to the overall pie. And then another one, I know we've spoken to this a little bit, but who are you putting in the ring on your behalf? What does your team look like behind you? Who do you want sitting at the table with you? Because the negotiation process is extremely stressful. And depending on who the buyer is, if you're dealing with a very large private equity group or a strategic buyer that might even be a public company, they might have 20 or 30 people sitting around the table on their side. Are you confident that you have the very best team of attorneys, investment bankers, CPAs, wealth people, and then I think so critically important, professionals like Jerome, who are going to be able to help you think through and navigate all of the very stressful changes, challenge that present yourself through this process. So again, this is typically not, the CPA, or very often not the CPA who maybe you started the business with, who just has never been through a transaction like the size that your business might be at this point. Again, same thing, it might not be the corporate attorney that you've worked with for years, just because, again, the size and scale of the deal might be larger than what they've ever worked on. Doesn't mean you can't continue to work with those professionals, but we often find that business owners who are going through the transaction of their life, it's very important that you're willing to bring on the team that can actually get the deal done at the level that you want. And again, there's always ways to navigate and manage the long-standing important relationships that you have and keeping them a part of the overall structure of your planning, but not necessarily letting them run the front of the deal and be the lead people on the front of it. So I think that's just it's such an important and often overlooked component of that as well. All right. And then another one, and again, this is one Jerome just mentioned as well, is never taking for granted that your attorneys and your other professionals have fully read the deal. They should, and they always do. But as thick and as long as those purchase agreements are and term sheets are and LOIs are, it's really important to really truly understand all the terms and conditions of the deal. What are the fees that the different professionals are going to be paying? ask a lot of questions. This is for many founders, this is the one time they're going to do this deal. And obviously there's serial entrepreneurs who do this multiple times, and they get better every time they do a transaction because they learn each time of things that they could have done better or differently. And oftentimes what they will say is they didn't ask enough questions. They didn't spend enough time kind of preparing and going through the process. And one tip in this that I would recommend, this is something we've heard from many other founders that have sold, is take a lot of meetings, even before you're ready to sell. Maybe with private equity groups, maybe with different investment bankers, because they're going to ask you a lot of questions about your business. And they might ask you to share a little bit of information. And so with NDAs and confidentiality agreements, you should be able to share enough information from them that they're going to come back and grill you on your business. They're going to ask you a ton of questions about your management team, your process, your systems. And it's just going to help prepare you better so that when you really are ready to do the deal and you do find the right buyer, you're just in a much different place and prepared for the questions they're going to ask, the process that they're going to take you through, how to defend your business really well, how to emphasize the highlights of your business. I would say that it's just versus like the one time you have that meeting is when you're ready to sell. So just a tip on related to the asking questions, go through the process before you go through the process and learn what to expect. And I've heard many founders say that I wish I had done more meetings with more private equity firms before we were ready to sell, just to get a better sense of what they were looking for, what the process was. And so that's just what I would, again, highly recommend with that. So let me take you guys through a case study on a transaction that we did in the last couple of years, just to walk you through the benefits of some of this planning. So this farm, it was an egg farm. So amazing family. They've been doing this for 4 generations. And you think about eggs, they were processing about 1 million eggs a day on their egg farm. So 1 million hens. It was quite an operation, amazing operation they put together. When we first met with them, they weren't even sure, because of how narrow the niche of their business was, is like, would they even have like a reasonable value? And were they even saleable? Would there be a buyer out there for them? They also had a short window that they were looking to complete the deal on. When we were doing their transaction, it was during the first big outbreak of the avian bird flu a few years ago. And they were very concerned that what if the flu hit their farm? Because when that happens right now, like basically the whole flock gets wiped out and they're starting from scratch again. So very short window to get the deal done when we met them. And in that limited window, we obviously wanted to maximize the tax savings as much as possible, because the way their business was structured with a lot of equipment and buildings, they were going to have a significant amount of ordinary income that was going to be associated with the deal if we went through with it. So what we are very confident in is that we had the right deal and the right team put together to optimize for this. So one of the things that they really valued is, through our network, we were able to bring in an investment banker that had significant experience in the agricultural space. And in the very first meeting with them, was able to give them a value range for the business that ended up being right exactly on point to what we ultimately got in the transaction. And then another huge benefit of that team is when we did the deal, it was actually a strategic buyer. It was a public company that bought them. We were able to negotiate an amazing earnout for them. We feel that just the cash part of the deal alone was a very good value for them. And we always look at the earnout as a throwaway, like, hey, if you get it, great. If you don't, like, don't expect it. Don't build your financial plan around the earnout. In this case, they're going to get probably an additional 30% kicker on the deal when the earnout is complete, just based on how we structured it. And a lot of that was due to the amazing legal team and investment banking team that we brought in. So huge importance. And in the tax savings alone on the transaction, we saved them well over $6 million in ordinary income taxes on the sale, and a lot more on the capital gain side as well. So significant savings just because we got to them ahead of the sale, I mean, before they went to market. So we're able to put some structures in place and do a lot of great planning. And then post-sale, again, just the work that we've been doing with them and helping them think through what's next and build out that long-term plan this is like a friendships for life now, because of the difference we've made for their lives. So again, just a case study on when things go right, when you build the right team, when you have enough time to do some planning ahead of the sale, that the market was right, the business was ready, and the family was ready. It all came together really perfectly in this scenario. So at the end of the day, I'll wrap here. I'll leave a little bit of time here at the end of the hour. You are the author of your own story. You have the power to create the ending that you deserve. So as we go back to the beginning and talking through the different tragedies, instead of a tragedy, this could be the best story of your life if you plan ahead and do the planning right. So to help you with some resources, so all of the data that I spoke to today, we created a white paper that goes a lot deeper on the research we did with the different M&A groups and the business owners that sold. That goes, again, a lot more into detail on all the areas that we covered today on things that you need to be looking out for, how to plan better, what are the key areas you need to optimize in order to get the ultimate maximizing of your family wealth when you sell your business. So it's a free resource. Hope you guys have a chance to download this and read through it. I think it's a very good read and very helpful to get you thinking about this important topic. And obviously, you have a great resource in Jerome. And obviously, feel free to reach out to me as well. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have. So, with that, again, Jerome, man, I really appreciate you. Really appreciate you putting this together and just bringing education information to your community and to the world at large. I think there, as we know from the numbers, it's just really needed. So few people are getting the outcomes that they really want and deserve. And I'm just happy to be partnering with you to see what we can do to help more.
Partner is the right word, man. It's our community, Homer. And I think what you gave to the folks is so important. We've watched so many people make the mistake of not getting a support pre-exit or not taking the meetings because they're not interested in it right now. And most people don't understand, hey, it's could be a 3 or 5 year period to get to the place where you actually have the transaction. And most people aren't operating in a state of exit readiness.
Yeah.
They have some things that could happen that would make a dramatic difference in what happens with the exit. And folks like you who are selling everything from egg farms to tech companies can really help people get in a space and a place where they can not only be ready for the exit, but have an exit that they don't regret. And we call that exiting excellence, where they're part of that 6%.
Yes.
So, man, thank you so much again. And we look forward to many more connections where we're helping the most amazing people on the face of the planet, those exiting founders.
Yeah, love it. Well, appreciate it, Jerome. Good to see you as always. And yeah, looking forward to what's next with you, my friend.
All right. Hey, to everybody who watched this, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you the next go round.